So today we are super excited. We have Katie with us, the CEO and president of Hope of Life and longtime partner. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark to officially introduce Katie. But Katie, we're so glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Noelle. Good to see everybody. I agree with Noelle. It's certainly nice to see everybody's face at least once a week. Hopefully sooner rather than later we can all be back in the office once again. Of course, some of you may be enjoying working from home, but I know I'll sure enjoy it when we can all be back together in the office. Like Noelle said, we have Katie Vargas with us today. She is the president and CEO of Hope of Life in Zacapa, Guatemala. She's the daughter of Carlos Vargas, who many of you have met both of them. They've been here at the office several times. Carlos is the founder of Hope of Life. And just for some background, and you may or may not know, but we've been partnering with Hope of Life since 2007. We sponsor thousands of children together. We've literally provided hundreds of clean water wells in partnership. We've rescued thousands of children and babies in need. We've provided portions of a hospital and a clinic, transformed 80 plus communities throughout Guatemala. And every year we take hundreds, if not thousands, of our donors and churches and supporters to Guatemala. So it's just a great partnership, and we're real thankful to have Katie here with us this morning to talk a little bit about what's going on right now in Guatemala. Obviously, as you know, Guatemala, like everywhere, is being affected by the coronavirus. Maybe not necessarily the actual virus. I think there's only a couple of thousand cases, but it is starting to spike there. But like everywhere, job losses are piling up, especially in the underserved communities. So food is a great need, and just making life really difficult on people in Guatemala. So we are working with Katie to provide food to meet those urgent needs. So I've asked Katie just to share for a few minutes with us about Guatemala, the coronavirus, and anything else, Katie, that's on your heart. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, Mark. Thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. One of my favorite trips every few months is getting to Lynchburg. I love Lynchburg, and it was my home for a few years, so I love getting there, so I miss you all. It's been really crazy. I've been on these Zoom calls a lot lately, and it's pretty incredible the opportunity we have that physically we don't have to be together, but we get to meet and we get to share what we do. And when Mark and I spoke about speaking today, he wanted me to speak a little bit about what's happening at Hope of Life. I'm in Rhode Island. That's our home base. Things are different here as well. Recently, we've had layoffs here plus Guatemala through this. As you guys know, our trips are 50 to 60% of our revenue every single year. And since March, we've canceled everything. And right after this call, I'll be canceling all trips through September now. And hopefully seeing that we could have trips back and getting at the beginning of September. Guatemala is a few months behind the surges and the viruses that are happening, and the president has really taken on an aggressive action in closing down the country. And Carlos and Cheryl are still there. They have been in Guatemala since January, and they have not been able to leave the country, but they're there with our staff really serving, and that's pretty incredible. We divided up. As you guys can imagine, Noelle and Vernon know that the first thing we do is divide to make sure we're all safe and that our organizations stay stable. And so Carlos, Cheryl, and I divided, and I came home. I was in Guatemala and on the last flight out before the borders closed. And we've just been working to see how we can continue to serve. At Hope of Life, we still have hundreds up to thousands right on campus that we serve between Hope of Life Village, the Village Transformation, Kelly's Home, St. Luke's, and the Elderly Home. And our first priority was to make sure that they were all safe because they are compromised and high-risk patients. So we've been working on a complete strategy on how we work with our teams. Our team is divided by 3. We have 2 teams that take on quarantine 24 days at a time. And then we have 1 team that doesn't go into quarantine and work in the office with our vendors and also in the villages with our sponsored children, with the villages of transformation, with our feeding centers, and getting out to the communities where we work. So we still have hundreds of staff serving the essential and the people that we could not let go of. But we also have all these communities that, alongside with World Help and different churches, we've come together and created true transformation and saved their lives in an incredible way. And just because coronavirus hit doesn't mean that we can stop that. So a few weeks ago when I spoke with Mark and Beth, we wanted to make sure that we found a way to keep our donors and our partners engaged. And in Guatemala, due to the stay-at-home orders, which are very strict, there's no work. Most of the people in the communities work harvests. The harvests have been completely shut down. There's no longer access to go food shopping other than Monday, Wednesday, and Friday between certain hours. And people leaving communities at times, like Claudia would know, and Donna, they walk miles and just to get to a grocery store. And the time that they consume in that is no longer possible. There's no more public transportation. And so us at Hope of Life and our vision and our mission of saving lives means that we have to get to them because we still have access and we still have ways to get there. So we've been working hard. We have 3 different teams in communities delivering food daily. And we just want to make sure that we get there before those white flags go up saying that they're starving, or that Hope of Life and the team are there taking those white flags down and saying we've provided food for them. And really, we've gotten to that third world country where malnutrition was already a huge thing. Yesterday, an article came out in Guatemala that malnutrition in children just tripled. It grew by 300% in less than 2 months due to the lack of food and access to food to these people in the communities. So, number 1, as a believer, one of my favorite verses is Psalm 46:10. It says, "Be still and know I'm God. God is with us." And so we keep strong in that faith, knowing that he's with us and there's a purpose for it. And there's always an opportunity to share Christ during this time by being the hands and feet of Jesus and bringing the practical gospel with food and medicine. So I just want to encourage you guys in that this is a lot of information, but there's still incredible things that God's allowing us to do through it. Like I said, we've divided, but there's so much more to do. Here in the States, our team has really taken on being advocates and talking to as many people as we can. And I would encourage you guys, we're here in the States, we're working from home, we have different capabilities. And today more than ever, not just for Guatemala, but for all the countries you guys work in, we get to speak to more and more people and get them to understand the desperate need. And just let them know that, you know, the United States is having problems, but the countries where we serve, we get to do more and more today than we ever have because the capabilities in their countries are not there. So I want to thank you guys for your hard work. I know it's been a struggle. I know it's not easy. I know some of you guys don't want to be home. I'm a traveler, so I don't want to be home, or a teacher sometimes. So we totally understand that. But God gave us our visions, our missions, and our callings for a certain time in history. And I think that today we get to impact the world in such a different way, sharing the gospel, sharing what we have, and knowing that we can get through this all together. So I want to thank you for our partnership. It's been 13 years almost. It's been an incredible 13 years. We've saved so many lives, and I know that there's so many more lives to save. Mark, anything else? You're on mute.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that. Really appreciate you sharing all that's happening in Guatemala at Hope of Life. I want you to know that we think of you daily and we pray for you daily. And I did have a couple of questions from various staff members. I just wanted to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind answering those over the course of the next few minutes. Katie, you had mentioned early on in this coronavirus situation, you and Carlos and the leadership at Hope of Life had offered up your medical facilities, your hospital and your medical clinic at the entrance there of Hope of Life to the government to use to treat coronavirus patients if it came to that. Is there any update on that? Have you had to, have they asked to use your facilities, or what's the situation with that?
So after that happened, yes, we offered it up. As you can imagine, there's always those risks that you think about, especially with the people that we serve on campus. Thankfully, the government did find another location, but we've decided that the medical clinics would be used to serve our people as much as we can. So we actually use it as a quarantine area when we bring in rescues and all that, where we can serve them and it wouldn't spread to anywhere else of the campus. So as of now, the government is not taking over the medical clinic.
Okay. You mentioned rescues. Are you still able to do baby rescues as normal during this lockdown time?
We had stopped for a few weeks as we were on full quarantine, but in the last few weeks and the tripling and how much malnutrition is really starting to come to us and the cases, we've opened up as well. Like I've said, we set up a quarantine area, and we've been working through with our doctors and who can come in and a safe way to get them in and out. We discharged every patient that we had at the hospital so that we could receive all new patients that were coming in that hadn't been quarantined, and we can make sure that the rest of the campus is safe.
And I know obviously,
so yes, we are receiving.
You're still. Okay, you're still continuing to work with sponsored children, and you mentioned providing food. How, as far as the food goes, how quickly are you able to get food out to these communities? Is it just a constant thing, or are you just doing that as you can, or how does that process work during lockdown?
We have our team, 3 teams that go into villages, and we're going daily to 3 different villages. As everyone knows, we have a lot of sponsorship in a lot of different villages. I think we're in over 50 villages just with sponsorship. And we have 3 different groups. They are fully masked and clean as much as they can. We also provide PPE masks for everybody in the bags. And as much as we have access to purchasing it, making sure that everybody has safe distribution of food.
How are the sponsored children doing overall?
They're doing well because we're there constantly. We haven't had any issues with them. It is a program that makes sure that we're with them. We've had to alter a little bit our program, where our sponsorship program is a hand up and a support system and not everything for the families. But due to this, we have been giving more to each family because the parents can't work, and they were all going to school, and now they can't. So we've altered it to support more as we can.
Katie, I had one staff member ask a question for you. What is your, if you can answer this, what is your favorite ministry area for Hope of Life?
Oh, I might give 2. So sponsorship is great because generationally, we can see the change in a country through our sponsorship program. Requiring them to go to school and being a hand up and not a program that gives them everything allows us to see a shift in our country for long term. So I love sponsorship and the core of what it means, because we're saving them. They have to have an education. They are not in the fields working, and they are changing Guatemala for the future. The other one is rescues. To see the change and the impact, and to say that we save lives means that we have to have the capability to save those that are actually dying today. So not just generationally, but today. If I'm working on generations, but I'm not working on today, then they never get the chance to be part of the shift and the transformation of their country. And so sponsorship and baby rescue, or just a rescue program, because honestly, this week we just rescued 2 elderly that were severely malnourished. So truly, those 2 programs make me feel as though I'm doing what God asked us to do day to day, and that's saving them and being the practical gospel. And with that said, it really just transitions to everything, because sponsorship comes from village transformation. And so you see this rounded mission where we actually can see the impact for generations to come. So those would be my favorites.
Okay. Another question, maybe you could speak a little bit to it. I think this is interesting for people to hear about. How do you select villages you work in, or that Hope of Life works in?
So our team always goes to the villages, and, number one, you work on seeing their need. Number 2, you work with the leadership. Claudia and Donna would be testify to, if the leadership is not the right leadership, the programs don't work. And so really we try to work with the leadership and see if they're going to have an open mind of transformation. And so we go through, we see their needs, we see what the leadership will and will not do. And, some of the leaderships doesn't work. Some villages we've gone in and decided after a project or 2 that we can't work there. Not because they don't have the needs, but the leadership won't allow it or create too much struggle. So we go through that, and it's, it just really depends on how they accept transformation and these projects and what the future can look like.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Lastly, how can we pray for you? How can we pray for Hope of Life?
I think that all kind of prayers are necessary. Number 1, I would pray that our leadership, our staff, keep us a strong faith to believe that God knows what we're going through and will help us through it. Number 2, that we just pray that we're able to advocate and talk to as many people as possible to make sure that we get to as many people in the villages as possible, that we don't miss a rescue due to this, or that someone just didn't have enough to eat. I would ask you guys to pray that we can do that together and do it. And also health, here we're healthy. Carlos and Cheryl stayed behind after a while due to their risk, but Guatemala is going to have a surge. They're expecting the surge to be through July and August. So I ask you guys to pray for the country in itself and our staff and the people we serve.
We certainly are continuing to pray that way, Katie, and we are remembering you daily, and we're so privileged and proud to work with you and proud of the work that you guys are doing, and obviously our desire is to continue to support the people in Guatemala as long as we can. I'm going to turn it back over to Noelle, and I think she'll start to wrap things up for us.
Noelle, before
Thank you, Katie. All right. Yeah.
I just wanted to share, there was a question that Mark asked, and I wanted to share just a praise. You asked about rescues and all that, and I had shared this with Mark. You never know what you're going to get and how we're going to be able to do things. And when we started up rescues again, we didn't have the plan, nor did we have the funding, but we knew that God was going to take control of it. And I just wanted to share, because sometimes we don't realize how impactful it is. About 30 minutes or an hour after we said yes to the child and brought him in, we received a donation from World Health for OBR. And I just want you guys to know those are God moments where miracles really do happen. We didn't know what was going to happen or how we would do it, but God really uses every moment. And in that time, you guys were there, and we're just grateful for your partnership, because those funds specifically helped fund the first baby rescue throughout this coronavirus. So just thank you. Just know that God creates incredible miracles, and that's one that we've been praising since it happened. So thank you.
That's really great, Katie. Thank you for sharing that. And that's what we love to hear, is just a reminder of why we do what we do. And there is so much uncertainty right now, but just remember how God is working in the midst of that. So thank you so much. I think my favorite part, though, was how you answered the question of your favorite parts of the ministry, which, by the way, is the hardest question to answer. But I love your explanation on it, because I think it really speaks a lot to why we partner as organizations so well together, because we're help for today and hope for tomorrow. And that's exactly what you described is, we want to meet the needs of people today, the crisis needs, but we have hope for them for tomorrow too. So I love how you explained that.